Okay, good day, everyone, and welcome once again to another exciting discussion on the subject Understanding the Self. Today, we'll be focusing our lecture on the self in Western, Oriental, or Eastern, and Philippine context. Now, in this lesson, we will be discussing different views of the self between Western, Eastern, and Filipino perspectives. Now, the Western view emphasizes individualism, goals, and self expression. The Eastern view sees the self as illusory, and the Filipino concept of self balances these by focusing on social harmony, interdependence, and the needs of the community over individual interests through concepts like kapwa, or empathy for others, and bayanihan, or the community spirit. Okay, so let's start our discussion by differentiating individualistic and collective selves. Now, as you can see on your screen, individualistic self prioritizes the self interest, independence, and rights of individuals, while the collective self focuses on a worldview that places high importance on the group or community as a whole. Another important concept that I would like you to remember is that individualistic society values independence, personal autonomy, and self expression. Individuals are encouraged to stand out, express their personal opinions, and pursue their personal goals. So you can see the focus on the individual itself. Okay, while the collective self in collective societies, the group, often the family, is very important. Individuals, therefore, tend to identify strongly with their in group, such as family or tribe or friends, and tend to value cooperation and social harmony over self interest. Now, individualism stresses individual goals and the rights of the individual person. Collectivism focuses on group goals, what is best for the collective group, and personal relationships. Now, it is worthy or it is noteworthy that individualist is motivated by what? Personal rewards and benefits. And individualist persons get personal goals and objectives based on self. Now, in an individualistic culture, people are considered good if they are strong, self reliant, assertive, and independent. Now, again, let me repeat that. In an individualistic culture, people are considered good if they are strong, self reliant, assertive, and independent. So, these are the concepts or these are the characteristics or traits that is expected for an individualistic culture. This contrasts with collectivist cultures, where characteristics like being self sacrificing, dependable, generous, and helpful to others are of greater importance. So you can see the focus of each relationships or of each culture. Now, people from individualist societies have self concepts that are more focused on independence. Again, people from individualist societies have self concepts that are more focused on independence rather than interdependence. So, for individualist society or culture, they focus on independence, while for the collective society, they focus on interdependence. Okay, as a result, they tend to describe themselves in terms of their unique personal characteristics and trait. Another, a person from an individualistic culture might say, I am analytical, sarcastic, and athletic. Okay, again, remember those characteristics, all right? An individualistic culture might say, I am analytical, sarcastic, and athletic. Now, in contrast, okay, for people who are in a collectivist society, they would describe themselves as what? I am a good husband. I am a loyal friend. I'm a performing student. Okay, I am a respectful student. Okay, so you can see the focus of each societies based on their concepts of self. Okay, so that's the individualistic and collective self. Now let's focus on the self in Hinduism. Now there are many Hindu beliefs and teachings, but the two most common views of self in Hinduism are Brahman and Atman. Now, Brahman is the divine spiritual truth or the soul of God that encompasses all beings in the universe. In Hinduism, Brahman is understood to be responsible for all creation, maintenance of all creation, and its destruction. Brahman, their god, is responsible for Atman. Atman is the eternal human soul that carries on after one's body dies and is destined to be reincarnated into another body. So Hinduism believes in reincarnation. Now, Brahman creates and contains the essence of all things, including Atman. Okay, again, Atman refers to the eternal human soul that is being transferred to those who are reincarnated. Now, meaning each human soul is part of Brahman. Now, to better understand the connection between Brahman and Atman, imagine three rivers that connect to a lake. If asked, each river would eventually or individually say, "My source is the lake." If asked what their sources are as a collection of rivers, they would say our source is the lake. Now, ultimately, there is no difference between each river's source and its collective source. The answer is the same, the lake. If each Atman is a river, they are still composed of and derived from Brahman, which is the lake. Now, this idea of the self being a small part of a greater whole, is described in ancient Hindu texts as that art thou. Now, the ultimate goal of Hindus is to become their truest selves or self realized in order to merge their Atman into the divine Brahman consciousness, granting one liberation through this deeply spiritual process. So, the self in Hinduism is very much connected to their belief to Brahman. Okay, now let's look at the self in Taoism. Taoism views the self as part of the greater whole of the universe. And Taoists believe that individuals should achieve what can be called self actualization by living naturally and in spontaneity. Now, an idea that is crystallized in the Taoist concept of Zeran. Now, if you look at here, the self in Taoism holds six important components: unity with the Tao, wu wei or non action, simplicity and humility, inner reflection, interconnectedness, and balance. Now, in Taoism, the concept of the self is significant as it emphasizes harmony between the individual and the natural world. Again, the Taoism concept of the self focuses on the harmony between the individual and the natural world. Now, here are some key aspects. Number one, as I mentioned, unity with the Tao. The Tao or Tao is the fundamental principle that underlies and unites all things in the universe. Again, for those of you who are taking down notes, please remember that the Tao or Tao is the fundamental principle that underlies and unites all things in the universe. The self is seen as part of the greater whole. Now, understanding and aligning oneself with the Tao leads to a more harmonious and meaningful or fulfilling life. That's unity with the Tao. The second concept is wu wei or non action. Taoism advocates the principle of wu wei, which translates to what? Non action or effortless action. This does not imply inaction, but rather emphasizes acting in accordance with the natural flow of life. The self is encouraged to let go of excessive striving and control, allowing things to unfold naturally. All right? So the self is encouraged to let go of excessive striving and control. You just have to allow yourself to unfold naturally. The third concept is simplicity and humility. Taoist philosophy values simplicity and humility, suggesting that the self should not overly or not be overly attached to ego or material desires. A simpler life, aligned with nature and the Tao, leads to greater peace and contentment. Okay, so for them, they so much value simplicity and humility. They want to keep their life as simple as possible. Okay, and for them, that would help you lead a life of peace and contentment. The four important aspect of the Taoism is inner reflection. Taoism encourages self-reflection and meditation to understand one's true nature. Again, they value self reflection and meditation. Now, by looking inward as you reflect, Okay, individuals can transcend societal expectations and discover their authentic selves, leading to personal growth and spiritual development. So for them, it's very important that you continue to self-reflect. At the end of the day, you evaluate, you assess, okay, what have you become, what have you achieved, what are the things that need to improve, and whatsoever. Okay, the fifth important component of the self in Taoism is interconnectedness. The self is not viewed as isolated. Okay, it's not viewed as isolated, but as interconnected with all life, including nature. Now, this perspective fosters compassion and empathy, of course, as recognizing the self in others promotes a sense of unity. Again, this idea of interconnectedness promotes a sense of unity and responsibility towards the environment and, of course, the society. And the last important component of self in Taoism is balance. Taoism emphasizes the balance of opposites, which is the yin and yang within the self. Recognizing and harmonizing these dualities, such as strength and gentleness, or action and stillness, leads to a more integrated and balanced life. So, look at these important key aspects of self in Taoism and remember that. In summary, the value of the self in Taoism lies in its relationship with the Tao, the pursuit of harmony, simplicity, and the recognition of interconnectedness, all which contribute to a holistic understanding of existence and personal fulfillment. Okay, so that's the self according to Taoism. Now let's move to the self as described by Buddhism. Buddhism philosophy believes that religion is a way of life, and to live a moral life, to be mindful and aware of thoughts and actions, and to develop wisdom and understanding. So, just like Taoism, they also hold important components or important characteristics which define self according to their belief. Okay, there are four noble truths and eightfold paths as taught by the religion which reminds people that life should not be focused on pleasure. Okay, again, according to Buddhism, ourselves should not be focusing our attention, our life with material things or with pleasurable things, but instead we should be living in contemplation. Okay, now to help those believers attain this, they have this four noble truths and eightfold paths. Let's start with the four noble truths. The first one is life is suffering. So from the beginning, they are teaching their followers that life is suffering. Life does not solely offer the kind of living a person sees it to be. Attached with pleasures is a reality that sufferings are included in life and cannot be avoided. So, no matter what happened, as long as we're here on earth, we are bound to experience suffering, and that it's part of life. Okay, and that by realizing this, people who are believing under Buddhism can simply, have this mental fortitude to overcome their suffering in their life. And by understanding or realizing that life is full of suffering, that then they will not be surprised with whatever challenges and problems you are facing right now. Thus, will help you overcome them instead. Okay. Another, suffering is caused by what? Craving and aversion. Okay. Suffering, according to Buddhism, results from lack of contentment, and this lack of contentment results to suffering. Now, human needs are never ending, and that's true. Okay. Um, Whenever, for example, let's say right now there's a news of the iPhone 16 coming out, and I believe a lot of people are desiring it. But the reality is after acquiring such, let's say, material thing, the happiness will last for like how many days? Like a day, 3 days, a week. Then after that, another brand will release its new model, and then here comes your desire for that material thing again. So there is a never-ending desire for human beings, and getting what one wants does not guarantee happiness, which is true. There are a lot of people who have everything, who came from or who were born from a rich family, who have positions, or let's say this important um, class in society. However, um, there is still this emptiness, this feeling of emptiness. Thus, to attain happiness, our wants should be modified and controlled. You know, let us learn to live life according to what we have as of the moment. Let us be contented with what we have. And I believe that is one of the most important attributes, or let's say attitude and mentality or mindset that we should all have. Okay? Now, and without contentment, according to Buddhism, this could lead to suffering. Now, and that's fairly true, right? There are people what, who, let's say, buy more than what they are capable of. They're buying things that are beyond their salary, and at the end, what they acquire tons of loans and credits. So at the end of the day, that could lead to suffering. Okay, so we have to practice contentment. Another one, suffering can be overcome and happiness can be attained. So this is the good news according to the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Suffering can be overcome. And yes, happiness can be attained. And I believe even in the face of challenge, even in the face of problems, we can still find happiness depending on how we view, depending on how we train our mindset. Okay, when one learns to live each day at a time and is able to give up unnecessary cravings, then we could possibly attain happiness and freedom according to Buddhism. The last of the noble truth is the eightfold path leads to the end of suffering. So, in order for us, according to Buddhism, to attain a healthy, happy life, we should follow, or we should live according to the eightfold paths. Now, what are these eightfold? What are these eightfold paths? One, we have right view, which is know the truth. The second, right intentions, free your mind from evil. Third, right speech, say nothing that hurts others. Okay, we should control what's coming out from our mouth, because I believe that from within, okay, from the for who you are. I mean, those things that are kept hidden from your heart will eventually come out. Okay, and that defines, I believe that is one way to define a person. Okay, right action, which speaks of work for the good of others. Right livelihood, respect for life. Right effort, resist evil. Right concentration, practice meditation. And the last but not the least, right mindfulness, which is control your thoughts. Now, by following these eight folds, we can attain happiness. Okay, next, let's move on to the self according to Confucianism. This is, of course, proposed by Confucius. Confucius' philosophy of life stands with the idea that life is a living reality, a blessing, a natural, priceless right, and an opportunity to be with others, to work together for the common good to attain happiness. So, this is more of a collective form of life, that you're not just living um, on your own. You're not just focusing on your own life, but you're also living for others. Now, in this sense, the Confucian self can be understood in terms of the relation between individual and society. From the Confucian point of view, an individual's autonomy must be understood in the context of one's social roles and relationships. Again, your role in the society, the relationships that you have, all have important impact in yourself. That does not mean that people do not have the capacity to choose freely and to shape their lives in a way that is only controlled and determined by external influences. Instead, so this does not mean that, I mean, you don't have control over your life, that people can dictate your life or they can control over your life. No, that's not what Confucius meant. Instead, autonomy in the Confucian context is exercised through the social aspects of human life. Now, what does this mean? This viewpoint asserts that Confucians attempt to understand becoming fully human in a social context, and living as a true human being is meaningful only in relation to wider society. So, this means that your life will only have purpose when you work for the common good of the society. That this means that the threat to social order is actually selfishness. Okay, so in order for us to have a conducive environment, a healthy environment, and of course a happy life, we should live a selfless life. Okay, a selfless life. One of the main concerns of Confucianism is how to be fully human. Please take note of that. And Confucius and mentions the stress that lifelong efforts through self-cultivation and learning are the means by which one becomes truly human. All right. And in the Confucian philosophy, the principle of Ren characterized the self-possessing, compassion for others. The self, for Confucius, is the person within the society who exhibits refinement and compassion. Now, again, take note of this. For Confucius, the idea or the ideal world is a world without conflicts and a world full of harmony. Again, for Confucius, the ideal world is a world without conflicts and world full of harmony. In order to make this happen, Confucius aimed at reforming society by creating a virtuous government and society that would be ruled by people who have high moral standards. So again, we should strive to live life morally. Okay? Thus Confucius taught his disciples to be what? Junzi. Okay? Junzi. Junzi. Junzi speaks to a moral person, profound person, superior person, or a virtuous person. Unlike Shaoren is spelled as Xiaoren. Shaoren, compared to Junzi, is an inferior person, a petty person, a small-minded person who is occupied with selfish material desires. A Junzi takes care to cultivate his or her sublime moral character by pursuing Jen, benevolence or humanity, Yi, which is justice or righteousness, and Li, which is propriety or right. Qi, which is wisdom, and Shin, which is faithfulness, which enables one to become fully human. All right? So those are the self according to Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism, and of course Confucianism. Now let's look at the self in the Filipino context. Self in Filipino culture is influenced by a tapestry of multicultural influences and indigenous tribal origins. Remember, we were colonized by the Spaniards, by the Americans, and by the Japanese. So we have a very rich culture. Self in Filipino culture is formed through the concept of what? Kapwa, which emphasizes the interconnectedness and shared identity with others. Now, the self in Filipino culture is often defined by one's own role and relationships with the family and community. You know, we Filipinos value family so much. We have strong family ties. Strong social connections and obligations are highly valued and prioritized over individual needs and desires. And this is very much evident in the life of many. Like, um, yung kakainin na lang, let's say for example, ng one of the family member, or yung kakainin mo na lang, and then here comes your family or your brother or your sister asking for help because they need what? Medicine. They need something or money for their tuition. Okay? Yung kakainin mo na lang, yung para sa'yo na lang, is you're going to give it to others. That's one evidence of strong family ties, and we're so much family oriented in the Philippines. Now, remember, pakikipag-kapwa is a core Filipino value and conviction that each person is an extension of oneself. Okay? An acknowledgement of a shared identity and as such, treatment of other appropriately. So, I hope that this continues to live on and we do not forget this important Filipino attribute of putting um, value sa pakikipagkapwa-tao. Okay? Pakikipagkapwa also refers to the Filipinos' view, consideration, and treatment of each other in a fraternal manner that acknowledges their shared humanity. We see other people, even though we're not blood related, as what? Brothers and sisters. To take the other person into account means accepting and treating them as equals. Okay? And again, this is a very important Filipino trait or a positive Filipino value that should continue and live on. Filipinos are open to others and feel with others. We regard others with dignity and respect and deal with them as fellow human beings. Okay, pakikipag-kapwa tayo is also manifested in basic sense of justice and fairness, and of course, concern for others. And speaking of concern for others, we have this bayanihan, okay? A bayanihan spirit. Okay, and um, ever since, no, from the time the very much example, the very common example of this in the past is of course when they transfer houses, and the whole community helps to do that. I hope again this bayanihan will never be forgotten and will continue to be part of our culture. Now, from these lessons, we have learned the self or the concept of self in Western and Eastern, and of course in the Philippine context. In Eastern thought, influenced by Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, the self is seen as interwoven with community and emphasizing harmony between people and nature. Now, Confucianism focuses on proper social roles. Taoism values simplicity and spontaneity. Buddhism views the self as an illusion that causes suffering. And in Western thought, the self is seen as individualistic, self sufficient, and rational, promoting independence and the ability to provide for one's own needs through reason. And as Filipinos, we are known for our impressive traits like pakikipag-kapwa tao and bayanihan. So that's all for our lesson for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in our next discussion.